Joining us now, Jake Sherman, co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MSNBC political contributor. Former Congressman of Florida, Carlos Curbelo, is with us, an MSNBC political analyst. So, Jake, does this bill make it to the floor of both houses?
No, I don't think it makes it to the floor. It certainly doesn't make it to the floor over here. Speaker Mike Johnson is not going to put this bill up. I can tell you that based on reporting, based on conversations I've had. The only way this could get to the floor, and listen, we can't tell the future, right? We don't know how bad this is going to get. We don't know what we don't know at this point, Chris. So we have to just take that as a baseline. But the only way I could see this getting to the floor in the next several months is through a discharge petition. Now, a discharge petition, as we've talked about before, you need 218 signatures, and you could only do that after 30 legislative days of the bill being not acted on in committee. That would place this in late June. It's April, so we have 2 months plus of time that this bill will be ignored. So I honestly don't think this is a viable option in the House right now. And remember, the White House has just issued a veto threat on this bill. Speaker Mike Johnson is unflinchingly and unfailingly loyal to Donald Trump. There is let's be clear here. There's not a chance that Speaker Mike Johnson is going to put this on the floor on his own volition. It's just not going to happen.
There were congressmen, some Republican senators, expressing concern over tariffs over the weekend. Let me play a few of those.
And I got to say, if we're in a scenario 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, with massive American tariffs and massive tariffs on American goods in every other country on earth, that is a terrible outcome.
I'm not going to bubble wrap it. What's happening is not good. Now, will it continue? Will we find a bottom and then it'll start to go back up? I hope so.
Markets are down about 8% in just 2 days, and I'm getting all kinds of reaction from businesses, farmers in Wisconsin that are highly concerned about what's happening.
Those concerns come as hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sure you watched it, Congressman, they turned out all around the country, all 50 states, to protest Trump's policies. But, I mean, does that put enough pressure on them to do something? You just heard what Jake said. There's no chance that a bill like the one that's out there on the Senate side and that Bacon wants to put out there makes it to the House. So what do all those protests mean? What do all those phone calls? One senator telling me she usually got about 50 phone calls, maybe a day. Now she's getting in the thousands.
Well, that's right, Chris. And while Donald Trump doesn't have to face the voters anymore, congressional Republicans do return to the ballot in November of next year. So I do think the big question here is, how long does this all last? If it's another month or so, I can see these legislative efforts going away. If this is a half a year type thing, then I do think you're going to see congressional Republicans start to put up some resistance, start to leverage their votes. 4 senators can bring the Senate to paralysis. 4 House members can also paralyze the House. So I do think if there's no resolution here, if the administration doesn't communicate clearly with Republicans in Congress as to what the plan is, how long they expect that people will have to endure this pain. If you see job numbers starting to decline and the stock market continuing this route, then I do think you'll start seeing congressional Republicans leveraging those votes, especially in the context of this big reconciliation effort where the administration wants to deliver their agenda. You will start seeing some resistance. I don't know if it's the bills that you were talking about with Jake, but there will be other forms of leverage being used by members of Congress for sure.
Well, let me go back for just a second, Jake, to timing, because due respect to Senator Cruz, there's a big difference between 30 days and 60 days and 90 days and the patience of the American public. I know you reported on a House Republican conference call yesterday. If Trump doesn't show any sign of moving, then how much more of this can nervous Republicans take?
Well, I regret to inform our audience, I don't think Republicans in Congress are going to be our savior here. There have been a handful of them that have put out a bill that would take back congressional power over tariffs, but you should not count on that becoming law anytime soon. There aren't going to be sufficient number of Republicans to vote for it, but more importantly, the leaders in the House and Senate are never going to put that on the floor. I did think it was interesting today, though, that the White House felt the need to put out a veto threat over that legislation. Now, that is unusual. Usually you don't put out veto threats unless a bill is actually coming to your desk. And that tells me that they realize that there are a lot of nervous Republicans in Congress. But they can be nervous all day long. They're not actually going to be able to affect change here until maybe down the road that they will be able to. But we're going to be living in rubble economically at that point if Republicans are the ones actually turning on him. If anyone's going to change this, it's going to be the public. You made the point that they say people voted for this. I don't buy that. To the extent there are some people who voted for Donald Trump because they believe in his economic vision, sure, there are some. I think a lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they didn't like what was going on in the last administration. They didn't like that costs were so high. This is certainly not the answer to that. So I think the more that people feel this, it's certainly bad enough what's going on in the markets, but when they start feeling it in their daily lives, I think the politics for Donald Trump could change dramatically. And that may be the only thing that can rein him in, but that's a long ways from here.
Chris, people voted for Donald Trump because he promised to lower prices and improve the economy.
Well, imagine that, a radical idea that raising prices even more is not the answer.
Correct.
Well, some of us warned that what he laid out in his agenda was not going to achieve those ends.
And that's where we are. And we just have to remind ourselves and our audience, when people say this is what he promised he was going to lower prices. And
on day one.
Yes, and for anyone who says, well, the stock market is not the economy, you're right, it's not. But at this point, there is financial institution after financial institution that's putting out reports of a recession coming this year. It was either Goldman or JP Morgan last night that is now in recession countdown. And a recession is not just the stock market. That is the economy. And so if you think that's not going to impact everybody, I assure you, a recession does.
We talk about this a lot. The driver of the economy is small business, Catherine. The president keeps saying, hang tough. You don't have a lot of margins if most small businesses, right? You're just trying to employ your half a dozen, 10 employees, sometimes more. But can they afford to just wait this out and hang tough?
No, but the bigger question is, wait it out for what? What is the long-term objective here? Okay, they'll absorb some pain short-term, near-term, long-term. What is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? And he cannot articulate that. Is it bringing back manufacturing jobs? Because that's not going to happen based on the way these tariffs are constructed. They are raising the costs for those very businesses. Is it about raising revenue? In which case, tariffs will bring in some revenue. It'll be extremely regressive. That means it'll be paid disproportionately by lower income consumers, maybe to fund tax cuts in the longer term for higher income Americans and corporations. I'm not sure that's really a win either. But it's not clear, what is the objective? And if you're another country negotiating with someone who doesn't know what they want, how do you even offer concessions?
Yeah. We have to refinance our debt. We've got something like $20 trillion coming due in the coming years. And there's this idea, if rates go down, you're going to refinance it at a lower rate. But destroying our economy in the short or medium term so you can refinance our debt at a lower rate, boy, that's a needle in a haystack right there.
I don't even know if there's a needle.
Yeah.
Brendan, for Republicans who are hoping to wait this out, this is what the New York Times writes. Quote, no party or politician is recession-proof. Historically, even truly dominant political parties have suffered enormous political defeats during major economic downturns. If anything, Mr. Trump and the Republicans today could be especially vulnerable, as so much of his political strength is built on the economy. So in the same vein as economic damage, are we seeing the kind of political damage that will be hard for the party to reverse? And I'm not talking about, maybe they have a bad midterms and then they're much better 3.5 years from now. I'm talking about sustained political damage. Are you hearing rumblings of concern of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great long-term question to ask. This is supposed to be Donald Trump's vision for the economy. And now we got a long way to go, of course, and we don't know how long.
True that the manufacturing base of the U.S. has been hollowed out for decades. The point of debate here is whether tariffs and tariffs alone are the mechanism by which to fix that and to reshore manufacturing jobs. That's an open question. Economists have said that this tariff plan, at this point, the way it's going, really risks tipping the U.S. into a recession. And Jose, the conversation you were having with Brian earlier about the tariffs, the potential retaliatory tariffs that face China, whether it's 30% or 50% or 70 or 100%. No one really knows. And that speaks to, in the short term, the uncertainty and the chaos that, as we are looking at the latest Dow numbers off by almost 1.5% now, in real time, that the markets, businesses, the American people are having a really hard time trying to absorb this chaos and uncertainty. And if you look at Capitol Hill, there's some warning signs there flashing for the president. You have 7 Republicans in the Senate joining with this bipartisan bill to have Congress claw back its responsibility for issuing tariffs. It might not go anywhere in the House. In fact, it likely won't go anywhere in the House. But Don Bacon, a Republican from Nebraska, has introduced a House version of that same bill. Because, yes, tariffs are a tool of economic policy. But if you look at tariffs as a political tool, there are Democrats and Republicans who say this gives a president, in this case Donald Trump, but it gives a president too much power. It sets a president up to be the arbiter of economic winners and losers. And it disrupts and subverts the free market system. So to Lance's point about how the U.S. is economically strong, well, yes, the U.S. is a rich, powerful, economically strong country because the U.S. has benefited from the free economic system that this country set up and has steered for generations. And now Donald Trump is trying to undo that. But as he works to undo it, he certainly, you could argue, owes the American people an explanation, a real-time explanation of what his plan is and what his end game is.
Guys, Republicans are turning on Trump because, again, this isn't about hurting you. The Republican Party, and honestly, some of the corporate Democrats, don't give a damn about you. If you perished on the side of the street, they would go on with their day. But the stock market does matter to them. The opinions of big business people, the chambers of commerce, all of that does matter to them. And those groups are pissed right now. Both because a lot of them oppose tariffs ideologically. It doesn't fit their business model. For example, if you're an American company that imports a lot or exports a lot, then this is going to hurt you because all of a sudden now, let's say your biggest trading partner is Canada. Well, anything you import from Canada is going to be way more money, and anything you export to Canada is going to cost the Canadians a lot more money, making your business less attractive, right? And so you might have voted for Trump because he's going to cut your taxes and attack unions and make the minimum wage, never raise the minimum wage and make it easier to fire workers and all the things that a lot of capitalists love. I'm not saying all business people are evil, but a lot of business people, guys, frankly, hate the working class. So, they wanted that from Trump, but all of those things Trump could give them doesn't outweigh the fact that you can't be a businessman if there's nobody to do business with because the tariffs are too high and too ridiculous. And even as I've said before, some of the Republicans that do, in at least a theoretical sense, understand what Trump is theoretically trying to do, know that the way he's doing it, the extremes of how he's doing it, the lack of precision, how he's doing it, and no planning, as it notes there, they're all being kept in the dark, makes it so the Republicans have no choice but to, at best for Trump, stay silent, and at worst, launch an open revolt against him in the Oval Office.